with us. Chris Matthews has joined the conversation. First time we have heard from him since this report broke. Chris.
Well, Brian, I've been watching your great coverage, and I think Nicole has hit it on the nail a number of times this morning. But a couple of things I had the leisure of sitting here watching you rather than just I've been able to read it over and over. I have to tell you, the first thing that struck me was the political brilliance of Bill Barr 4 weeks ago. Had he said then, when he came out that Sunday with 48 hours notice to say what was in the report, if he'd come out and said then, I disagreed with Robert Mueller on obstruction of justice. That word disagreed. If he had said that then, for the last 4 weeks, it would have been the reigning headline of the story. I disagreed with the Mueller report on obstruction of justice. He did that this morning as part of a soft landing effort, what we call rolling disclosure, a term you know well in politics, where you soften the bad landing by saying, well, let me tell you this morning. What you're going to hear today in the actual Mueller report is not what I agree with. I disagreed with it. I don't think there was obstruction of justice. I don't like those cases, he pointed out. I felt they were wrong. So that's one thing. The other thing, Trump has been insistent, and he will be insistent if he runs for re-election, on saying, I don't owe the Russians anything for what they did in 2016. I don't owe them anything. Well, this report is very clear. The Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election in sweeping and systematic fashion. And then it goes into all the ways, rallies, websites, all the work that they did, the hacking, all the ways that they did interfere. Barr this morning, over and over again in his statement this morning, said attempted to interfere. Efforts to interfere. Never once, and I think this was playing for the president, did he admit the statement in the bottom line of this report that the Russians did in fact interfere with the elections. I think those 2 points, hiding his disagreement over the obstruction of justice decision and covering up really for the Russian intervention, in fact, effective intervention in the campaign, are 2 big points he scored for Trump today.
And Chris, don't forget the net effect of the 4-page letter on an otherwise newsless Sunday afternoon was to give the president air cover to claim, as he was up until today, total exoneration, no collusion, no obstruction.
Yeah, and along those lines, I mean, can anybody believe the president's responses, those written responses to the take-home exam he was given by Mueller? My God, it was like he had failed an Alzheimer's competency test. 36 times he said, I can't remember, I can't remember, I can't remember. We've been talking in the last couple of days, thanks to Robert Kaiser in the Washington Post, about what is too old to be president. My God, if you can't remember anything, is that to be believed? No, of course it's not to believe. He's competent enough to remember all those incidents, but he is somehow using that as his refuge. I got to tell you, the thing that bothered me the most, however, was Robert Mueller's report. I tell you, there's something in there that it makes moot the whole effort. He says, I can't indict a president, or I've decided not to because it will curtail his ability to be president. Therefore, I can't accuse because it would be unfair to someone who I can't indict to accuse them, because then they wouldn't have the recourse of a court to defend themselves in. So what was he doing? If he can't indict the president, he can't accuse the president, well, I can't exonerate the president. So his verdict was that unclear, sort of the old Arlen Specter Scottish verdict thing. Unproven. I can't exonerate him. I think it's very unsatisfactory. And he threw the ball up in a basketball game, and one side grabbed the ball. That would be Barr, grabbed the ball and shot it and said, innocent.
So the final question, Chris, where does this leave us? Because the Democrats in Congress have a real choice here about how and where to streamline their objections, their bills of particulars, and their investigation.
Well, they can take the obstruction of justice part. They can take elements of the collusion part. Clearly, all this ball playing. I mean, I think the decision by the Mueller team to say you can't prosecute on a guy who takes some dirt from WikiLeaks, from Lucifer 2, and uses that as part of a propaganda campaign along the lines the Russians intended, which is to hurt Hillary and help Trump. I don't see why that's not advancing a conspiracy, but I guess that's their legal judgment. It seems to be a big difference between them reporting it for their political purposes and someone in the objective media simply saying, here's what the Russians are pushing. It seems to be two totally different stories. But I think it's going to come down to, let's face it, Jerry Nadler, who's listening to Nancy Pelosi. And Nancy Pelosi has made a political judgment that without Republican support for an impeachment exercise, she shouldn't go along with it for political reasons. In other words, if you can't make the case in a bipartisan fashion, don't make it, because it will only serve the purpose of hurting yourself politically. Now, as journalists and as commentators, we can say, you know, that's not really the right way to make a decision, because you've been saying all along that your questions about Trump and his behavior were nonpartisan. You simply want to get the truth and follow the truth. But then you can't step back and say, well, now I'm going to make a political judgment. It's not in our interest to pursue this in a partisan fashion if that's what it comes to. Well, that's not being consistent. If you're going after the truth, go all the way with the truth. And the way to get to the truth is an impeachment exercise. That's how you get the truth. That's how you get the subpoena power that will be upheld. I think this Supreme Court will support the right of any Congress to advance the cause of an impeachment exercise.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.